Testing, testing. Can you hear me? Oh, thank goodness. I would hate to do a stream where the entire stream I just talked and nothing worked. Hey, Spear. Hey, Sheeta. Nice to see you guys. So, proof of concept. We're here. I know, it's 2:11 for me. But we're here. We did it. We got something going. I even have a little avatar thing I made. It worked out. Key talks. It's great. I was originally only gonna have like my guy go uh like black and white and like or dark shadow and white. And this guy was the right size for with the program I was using. And now he talks like a little genius. Like I am a genius. Like I know what I'm doing. Yeah, I know. Do I? I'm gonna try to at least know what I'm doing. Um, I tried to doing like a last minute like, oh look, there's all these extra programs I can use, and then I was like, this is gonna take much longer than 20 minutes to figure out. We're just gonna go back to the old. I'm gonna give a PowerPoint presentation setup and call it a day. So we're back. We're back to square one that worked. The best. I know Sheeta's doing some verifying stuff. There it is. There she is. She's here. Well, I don't know how much. Yeah, I had to as well. I remember back when Hal was doing her commissions for these little icons and emotes and stuff. I had a Twitch, and then I had to re-verify because I had not used it in so long because I only used it to watch her. Uh, so, but now we're here, and now we'll get into it. Now we'll listen to the sultry asthma of my voice. I have to allow the term LMAO. Wow. All right, well, we'll see how that auto shield mode goes, but otherwise I'll turn it off. We will get into these. Hello, my name is Nathaniel Wilhelm, Captain Nathaniel Wilhelm. I am a pirate, a trespasser specifically, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Age, I would figure my age is about 25. I don't have a beard or anything, and I have a good complexion. But I'm between 30 and a lot older, in standard Earth years. So that's all backstory. This is all backstory that I have all had and like have had in mind, and now we're playing out. When I started my Patreon, I literally ironed out all of the background details before I even hit the accept button. And so here we are. These are all the things that I've held back for years. Um, my hobbies are writing, reading, gaming, exploring the imaginative limits of imagination, uh, cooking, stealing, cheating, and taking risks. I'm about 5'11 and my weight is none of your business. Credit to the. I'm tall as you. I am pretty tall. I am the most arbitrary height in the entire world. Because if you are 5'11 and you tell a girl you're 5'11, you are either over 5'11 by well over 5'11, exactly 5'11, or like 5'6. Like there is no in between. Um, the artist that drew this was Escape as Howl. I've included her art in many of the things, so that's not just a boring PowerPoint presentation. But she did this little emote guy PNG that I'm using for my talking voice. I'm actually going to adjust it just a bit. What does my right eye do? We will get into that actually. I have powers listed. Um, but yeah, so Escape as Hell, she did this. And so now that I'm getting into VTubing, it was like a really ready resource to just be like, hey man, I could just do this. Um, Intro lore to the captain. So, backstory on the captain himself, the pseudonym, the man, the myth, the mystery. So, my backstory, I'm going to start talking the first person now. My backstory is that I was born on Earth, regular Earth, you person Earth. And then I was swallowed up by a mysterious instance that I still haven't figured out, and landed on a jungle planet, a planet where I spent many years of trauma just surviving. Um, it was a terrible, terrible event, but one that eventually, ah, things disappeared. They're back. Eventually, I found a cave, and in that cave, I found something that changed my life even more than that. A Yeah, truck coon, exactly. Um, here's the thing with truck coon. You don't remember traumatic events. I don't know how many isekai protagonists have actually uh could even like remember that they got hit by truck coon if they even remembered. Most human psyches blot that stuff out. But I digress. I found a cache, and in that cache was a pirate's trove. A trove in which had many, even more mysterious treasures. But the one that changed everything was a journal that told me certain terms about, or taught me certain terms about my situation specifically. Um, and that I was a being called a trespasser. A trespasser being uh, essentially someone who crosses between between worlds. Gender bent Captain Wen. If I get enough money eventually saved up, we'll look into gender bent Captain. Um, I definitely want to do streaming enough that it becomes a full time gig, but I'm not in a place where I can make it a full time gig. In this, I learned about some hot keywords about the trespassers, the aggressive factions, the passive factions, everything that happens behind the scenes of what happens to people when they are transported to another world, and people who end up transporting to even more worlds. And they're all trespassers. The most notable location that it alluded to was this place outside of what most people would call the multiverse, called Academy Isle. Academy Isle being a place where people learned about how to be a trespasser, and more importantly, about the rules. Um, because there are laws of nature and there are laws of the trespassers. And these laws essentially they governed all trespassers and they were super arbitrary. Nobody had ever written them down except for the people that had either stumbled upon them or had friends that succumbed to them. But essentially, these rules will enforce your eternal youth and immortality if you follow them. But if you break them, no matter what kind of immortality, what kind of invulnerability, what kind of anything you've gathered going from world to world, it would be null and void. It superseded all of that. So if you broke the rules, you were as good as dead if someone found you and wanted to kill you. I shouldn't say as much. Eventually, I made my way off the island using the treasures, using my own wits and survival, and made it to Academy Isle, where I joined the pirate faction because it was the most suited to me. I attribute a lot to my savior, uh, who unfortunately passed long before I ever found the cache. Eventually, I got to be such a big name, I needed to lay low for a while, so I came to Earth. Regular Earth, my person Earth. And I am here hanging low, where I can talk about trespassers as much as I want, and nobody gives a dang because there's no magic here. Everything is um, undermined by a perfect amount of skepticism. So I can talk about other worlds and trespassers and all sorts of things, and nobody cares. And everyone thinks it's all one big fantasy. But no, I can spit as much truth as long as I don't act on it, and I'm not breaking any of the rules. So I'm fine. And anyone who enforces the rules can't even touch me. So I'm laying low for a while and just hanging out until the steam blows over. I'm hanging out until words. Until the heat dies down. Wow, can't think of the heat dies down. I'm losing it. All right, powers. Now we're going to talk about the glowing eyeball thing. So, over my adventures, I have gained many powers and abilities. Let's see. Nice backstory. Thank you. Sort of like survival story of a sword king. Yeah, I read that for a while. Mine is that I exist as a seed that was planted by the original to live alive, and there are infinite number of seeds and an infinite number of worlds. Okay, very cool. Um, I digress because we're back to the pirate gaze. So my eye is actually an implant that I got on Academy Isle, and it's actually a super special eye that, if you think of the closest thing I can relate it to, is Mad Eye Moody from Harry Potter. If you know his eye that goes in every direction, it's just a purple orb. It's like that, except that there are multiple irises, and I can see through my eye patch. And it has several other abilities. But if I just wear it and look at people normally, it usually spins around so much and freaks people out. So I keep it covered to make sure that I'm not scaring people in my day to day life. Um, of course, teleporting between planes, worlds, etc. My I gained the ability to get to Academy Isle, where I honed that. A sword master, once again. I had to survive for myself, and there were a lot of cutlasses in that stash. I tell you what, probably more than there should have, but that's probably why he died if they were all there. Cheap magic, including spatial storage. One of the things that all trespassers learn in Academy Isle is what we call required reading. There are some worlds that you can go to that you can get powers just by going to them. And you can get those cheap powers just by going to them. So we just stock up on as required reading. So getting magic from a magic world, you go there once, and now you can use magic. You go to a world that's based off of games, like Pearly City, and now you have an inventory and level up systems. So, and then you just every time you go to a new world, you can get new abilities, you can get new treasures. I even have a giant pirate ship with my trove and all the things that I have gathered there. But if I talked about that forever, we would be here forever. Talking about what I've done. Yeah, exactly. Like that, yes. Or like the world's laws influencing you. Yeah. Well, thank you. So, what I've done is I have recorded some of these worlds in fiction. Worlds that I've written and full books that I've completed include the Tales of the Pearly City, Tales of the Pearly Empire, Fox Tales and Fairy Tales, Reckless Adventures in Another World, Fox Tales and Fairy Tales, Facades and Fables of the Phantom Prince, which is not finished, but I'm going back to, True Love's Seventh Kiss, and then I have some honorable mentions of other stories I've covered: King of the Vale, Prison Sage, Tales from Fox Tales, When Frost Meets Ice, Jack Frost's Last Fairy Tale, This is Wicked, which I'm going to go back to, The Candleman, Love, Distressed, and Fairy Dust, and several others found on Wattpad, Tapas, and Patreon. Most important thing to note is that the rules of the Trespassers are all playing behind the scenes, and all of the books that I've written, especially these top five, play to those rules. They all act according to them. And in fact, this picture in the corner here was provided to us by our lovely Sheeta as a present. And it is of Cal, Shaylee, and other characters from Tales of the Pearly City. She did not draw it. She hired an artist. I was gonna look it up, but then I got all into that OBS stuff, and it didn't work for a while, and I had a panic attack. Can you teach me how to write worlds with underlying rules? Yes, actually. I know there's a lot of resources online, but uh, I didn't see a lot of like writer-oriented VTubers, and so what I want to do is talk about some of that. I want to do content creation, hang out with crew and you guys, streaming games, art streams, live readings, and writer resource streams. So, at once a week, I like to do 2 streams a week. Once a week, I'd like to do like a gaming stream, and the other day, I'd like to do a resource stream where I talk about, yeah, where I talk about how to build things or like build rules in cities or explore writer concepts or just do a story hour. I'd like to just do some fun games. Like I have a bunch of pictures saved. I'd like to just kind of do like a random, like, let's pick a random picture, draw lots, and then we'll come up with this character's backstory in no specific area. Um, I'd like to talk about how people can become better writers. I'd like to explore my how to write and get how to write like a pirate and get reads and stuff book on stream and maybe even read it and go through it and how to um, resources that you can look at like Brandon Sanderson's talks on magic streams and kind of go over that stuff. But I'd really just like to have fun with you guys. But my little teacher instincts are or mentor complexes are like I could do all sorts of like teaching moments and create lesson plans and like I'm such a nerd. So here's that. Main focus, I want to do 1 to 2 streams a week. I think I'm actually going to do it on Wednesday because I have so much time like Wednesday early in the morning, and then I want to do like a Sunday night stream because I don't work Sunday night and I usually have all that time in the world anyways doing nothing. So those are the two times of the week that I am the most free. Um, yes, I would love to spread my knowledge, and I want to come at it as like I am not a master in any of this, but I have my 10,000 hours, and if I can put what I know into the world, we can increase the conglomeration of knowledge of how to be good at a skill. Um, this idea of there's not one perfect be all end all scientist. There's not one perfect be all end all writer. We all have things we can bring to the table to increase the field. But the games I want to play, I'll probably do simple games on my potato computer. I call it a potato. It's a pretty new like Lenovo, but it's also like just a laptop. It's not a gaming PC or anything. Last time I played a game on it, it was like the engine on it was revving like I was a freaking um like an airplane jet engine. So I'm gonna look into getting a capture card so I can stream on my Switch. Also, how did you get started? Like I want to start a novel, but my world is so big I can't figure out where to start. And my laptop is always like 90 degrees. Yeah. If I don't have the right airflow in my laptop, if I put it on my lap in the wrong place for too long, then it starts to spin up like a jet engine. Um, I've come across that problem with some of my stories that I've not been able to tell because the world is so big or the events are so expansive. At a certain point, you really kind of have to dive into it somewhere. You want to figure out the story that you want to tell, and I would always advise that you tell your story around characters. Find a character that has the most character growth, who can go from 0 to 100, because those are the most interesting stories to read, or when a character has actual character development. If that's part of the reason that Superman's such of a hard character to write and follow, because as much as you want to love the guy, and as cool as he is, he's like he's still kind of perfect from start to finish. There's not a lot of character growth. Unlike Batman, who, as many stories as he has, there's always some sort of different character growth. And that's not to say one is better than the other, but definitely there's consensus on who is more interesting to follow as a character. So if you have to make up one, if you have to create a character with flaws, like do it, throw him into the world and see where he goes. Get a couple starts. Don't like throw all of your eggs in one basket and just kind of accept like, okay, this is where I want to go. Let's see how far I can get with this character in this age and this character in that age. Um, but yeah, you want to have a character. The most important thing about having a character is that they have to have faults, motivation, and something to overcome. Like if they are perfect and can do everything they want to and are super powerful, there are some Japanese isekais that can get away with that, but that's most Western media follow some kind of broken, traumatized character in a hero story who pulls a who starts from nothing and makes something of himself, who has no access to resources until he makes access to those resources. So, so yeah, so like things like that. Like I'd like to talk about how to make a good character and what I think makes a good character. More importantly, like maybe not I'm not the master of the craft, but I definitely have a lot to give. I think a lot of I've made just about as many mistakes as you can make, and failed as many times as I succeeded. Like if we go back to that last page, like of the stories that were there was just a small section of like failed stories. And I'm just about as proud as those failed stories as I am about the successful ones, just because like they were all learning experiences. Getting a few ideas, I'll probably throw them around later. Awesome. There are two stories that made me really dislike the MC, but I loved the end more than the other stories because they really did grow a lot. It's just the hard part is to lose your audience because the MC is annoying, I guess. Yeah, yeah. You want to have a character that has somewhere to grow from, and you have to kind of be careful with where they grow from. Grid. Yeah. Yeah, I still loved Grid. I thought he was hilarious. I think, but you have to like, if you're gonna make a character like Grid, you really have to know you're playing on the comedy of it. Um, like all the characters that are money hungry or have something to lose or something to gain, like there's a lot of like scumbag MCs, and part of the reason they're scumbags is for the comedy of it. But you can't make a really good scumbag and then make it like bad unless you're really good at writing. Yeah, I enjoyed his development. I read till like chapter 1000. He was so good. Yeah, I read way into that series too. Um, Back to the point where I think it was a long time. Oh, and the Greatest Estate. That was a good one too. But yeah, I digress. Um, Resource streams. There's things I want to do. I want to stream on games. I'll probably talk a lot on them. I enjoy story-driven games, side scrollers, adventures, and of course, gotcha games. I have an unmitigated gotcha addiction. I've spent way too much money on Fate Grand Order, and I don't have enough people who are passionate about it with me to like to talk about it. So I'm just here in my lonely like Fate Go world, like yes. Oh, when I get like the rare characters and they're like trying not to tell the world that I'm spending 20, 30, $40 on gotchas and streams. I've been playing Genshin Impact. One of the reasons is that I actually have a friend I met over Wattpad, and we were writing Jelsa and stuff together. Um, and we've just been friends this whole time. And she got into Genshin Impact, and I was kind of into it, and now we just kind of play together. Recently, got my hands on HZD and God of War. I don't know what HZD is. Horizon Zero Dawn. Oh yeah, I loved Horizon Zero Dawn. I like the first one real like a lot. I got it when I first got my PS4, and it was a great experience. I dove so hard into that. I just really enjoyed it. I didn't play the second one. Um, I didn't like the way they did the character stuff for Aloy because I thought she was super pretty in the first one and not. I don't know what they did, but they made her less pretty in the second one, and that kind of peeved me. And it just wasn't. I don't know. I kind of got over that phase, but I really enjoyed the first one. It was a great experience. I would play it again, but I wouldn't pay full price for the second one. I'd sooner play Elden Ring. That's not to say that it wasn't good. Horizon Zero Dawn 2 just came out in like the worst possible time, so it didn't really get a fair shot. So if you enjoy it and love it, that's because you found like a hidden gem. But definitely Elden Ring had like a huge producer behind it, lots of hype, lots of marketing. It was just it came out around the same time as like this big giant and just kind of fell in its shadow. So if Horizon Zero Dawn is 2 is good, let me know. I've seen some people like it and enjoy it. I haven't heard that many complaints about it, just like the usual like nitpicking you find with any video game. But some of my goals is I don't know why I'm trying to rush through this. I'm trying to make a 2-hour stream. So, I am also waiting on the Bloodborne port. I don't know what I want them to do with Bloodborne. I know Jacksepticeye has talked about wanting them to do a remaster, and I think that would be cool. But I don't really notice a lot of the differences between like 30 and 60 FPS. Um, that's just me and my terrible eyesight. I think it would be good to have like an engine and graphics upgrade, and I would love a Bloodborne 2. Like, the soon as they tease it, like, I will totally be on board. I did so much lore digging on Bloodborne before I ever played the game. Vati Vidaya. You've lost me with Vati Vidaya. Did you see Haas Soul Arts? Oh, okay, he did an art contest. Okay, that's what you're saying. My favorite games are where you make different choices to change the world around you and the ending. Mass Effect, even with the RGBD ending, was really good. Oh yeah, I loved Mass Effect. I played the trilogy to death. I even bought the Masters Edition. Um, I remember when Sekiro also like was announced and everyone thought it was Bloodborne 2 and I was super hyped and then it was Sekiro and I was like, "Ah, it wasn't Bloodborne 2. It was Sekiro." But I definitely got into Mass Effect. I definitely got into Dragon Age. I like ones that are story driven like that too, and I like the ones where you can romance the pretty characters. Um, I don't know if you remember Liliana from Dragon Age 1, but romanced her so much I got her accent. I replayed the romance for that so much. I found myself talking with like the half French accent and couldn't stop. Hold on one second. Oh, I left my water on the table and I've been talking for 30 minutes. I already need it. How's the sound quality, by the way? Is it okay? Is it terrible? Do I need to get a microphone? Awesome. Yeah, I am using a microphone off of a pair of earbuds. It's not great, but it's what I have, and this is a whole proof of concept stream. I'm just trying to be here to be here. Skyrim is the best because you can moss it into almost any other game. Mod it, yeah. I did my fair share of modding on Skyrim to the point that I think I almost broke it. I had to start eliminating some, but I definitely bought Skyrim and Oblivion so many goddamn times on so many goddamn consoles. I had so many copies of it for computer, for Xbox, for PlayStation, for Switch, anything that could have it on it. I was like, "Ooh, I like this game. I'll play it on this one as well." The sickness that is Elder Scrolls and their madness of we can publish it on everything and you'll play it, and I will. I'm so stoked for Elder Scrolls 6 too. Like, I don't know. I haven't heard much of what they're doing with it because I'm kind of staying away from it. But I'm super stoked that it's finally been announced and there's finally some work on it. I thought about getting into Elder Scrolls Online, but it's not my scene to do much online gaming. I'm a single player. Also waiting for Starfield. I've seen some trailers for Starfield and Star Citizen. Um, I've almost wanted to get into them, but sci-fi is not as much my scene as much as fantasy is. Um, Plus, I have just like a PlayStation 4 is my like most high tech console. So if they're not on PlayStation 4, then I'm not playing them. Ah, Lordum time. Okay. These are going to be like 12 slides almost. I have a lot of lore I was just going to dump on you guys. Star Citizen, great mechanic. Han inspired me. I don't know if I've ever read that one or seen that one. I'll have to look into it. I'll put it on my list. Great mechanic Han. So lore. How to start? Well, I guess we'll start with Order. Order is a goddess, the goddess and the story keeper. The legendary mechanic. I know her. Okay, I know them. That one. Uh, Order is the goddess and story keeper of all of the worlds. All of them. All of the universes. If you've read Pearly City, it's Kami. That's why there's so much. That's why I finally waited to do this. Is because every book has just a little bit of the background lore, and Kami is Order, this being of being everywhere. She is the god of all storyscapes. She exists in every storyscape as the chronicler, writer, and audience, which is why it's called the storyscape. That's why I call it the storyscape, just to kind of separate my multiverse from the others. They have a vested interest in Chaos's role and their lasting influence. Although it may be a common topic for veteran trespassers that meet Order, she will never acknowledge topics about the rules, and when pressed, she merely defends her deflections with spoilers. So Kami is Order, and Cal is a actor, and we'll get into that. That's more terminology for later. But Kami and Cal are not siblings. Wait, well, it's complicated. Yeah, okay. It's complicated. So I don't know if I would ever call Order and I guess we'll go to the next one. Chaos. So this is where it comes in that Cal's a part of the equation. Chaos is a being of constant reincarnation who has and will live a different life in every storyscape with no memory of the last. Their existence is the reason that no two storyscapes is exactly the same. To Order, or Kami, Chaos is as much a protagonist of the storyscape as he is the antagonist, a being of constant change themselves and the influencer of constant change. So Kami and Order are both lovers and rivals and friends and enemies. They are everything because they are everything, if that makes sense. Because Kami is always the same, but Chaos is always different. There are some storyscapes where Kami and Chaos have come into combat and Chaos has killed Kami, and vice versa. But they are the constants in their realms of influence, where Order is the goddess of order, and she is the same. She knows every of herself in every multiverse. And the reason that it's called the storyscape is because she has that vested interest in Order and what he decides, or Chaos and what he decides to do, because Chaos is such a wild card in the grand scheme of things. And this is considered the comedy, tragedy, and epic that is the story of Order and Chaos, is known as the greater story. And the Trespassers just kind of live in it. They meet versions of themselves who are, in fact, Chaos, and versions of Kami who are there. There are just as many Trespassers that are fragments of Chaos and reincarnations of Chaos as there are not. There's no guarantee one way or the other. But it can be confirmed that Cal is a incarnation of Chaos. His entire existence is matches with what Chaos is. If you think about who Cal is versus who Tragedy Cal is, the very fact that they lived two different existences only proves that they are Chaos that much more. They will always make different decisions, no matter what realm they're put in, no matter how many times they're put into it. That's why every universe is different. Key locations. If Cal moved to the Pearly World, does that mean that there can be more than one Chaos in a world? So Chaos exists. So Chaos exists across several storyscapes simultaneously. So the short answer is yes. Because Chaos cannot be predicted, he can be in more places than once. He can, but the fact is that he has been everywhere. Theoretically, there's probably one world that has never had a Chaos, but I've not explored that concept very much. But the fact is that Cal can exist. Sorry, chaos or incarnations of chaos can exist. They can even fall in love with each other. That's just kind of the nature of chaos. It can be anything, and because it can be anything, anything and everything goes. Um, we live here in our skeptical Earth 001 Terra Prime. There is nothing special about this one. Terra Prime is a basic template of Earth with no known magic or restricted to limited magic for those guys who show up here. And it is very heavily regulated. And so if I get in trouble, I get in real big trouble. If there was ever a place where chaos was not really super allowed to mess around with, it was here. But most people living here are actually, I would say, passing gentlemen that we'll get into later. Another key location is Academy Isle, which we've talked about in the Discord a little bit, but I will kind of set down more permanently here canonical rules and things about Academy Isle. Academy Isle is a place if order rules over every storyscape, there is an anti-storyscape, a place between them, where Academy Isle resides. And Academy Isle is a place where only trespassers can go. It is fundamentally a place that can only be crossed into. I guess people can be born there, but more than often than not, their parents are trespassers too, and have the ability through their parents to trespass. It is a place where people learn how to be trespassers, and a place where um, trespassers can go as a port where they can trade information and items and gold, because gold is their primary resource of trade, and relics and all sorts of things. And it is also called Outer Isle for that reason, because it exists outside of the storyscape. Um, Other storyscapes, known storyscapes that we have talked about. Earth 002 or Terra Alpha um, is where Sebas, Cal, Marion, and Dexter call home. Dexter is from Wicked. But Sebas, Cal, and Marion all came from Earth 002. Yggdrasil or Terra Perilous is the world of the Tales of the Pearly City series. Flint and Raven call this place their home planet. And if you didn't know, Raven and Flint are both from this place. And then Wayland is Terracana. This is the formal name of Foxtails and Fairy Tales. And wow, I didn't spell Foxtails right. That is embarrassing. So, yes. Yeah. Raven is a trespasser. She's kind of in the same boat as Flint, where she was shanghaied into another world, and her story progresses where she'll essentially follow him from world to world as he goes world to world. But we're gonna that is a topic for following. But yeah, it's not called Earth; it's called Wayland. That was a decision I made. I've not given Foxtails and Fairy Tales their world a name yet, but now it has a name. And then Panthea is the Pseudoterra prison Epsilon, and it's the world of Seventh Kiss. And Panthea is actually a reference to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, of like a prison island. No wonder I could feel the tension. Yes, yeah. Pseudo, meaning it's like a fake Terra, because it's a prison planet. So it's not exactly. So Terra means it's usually based on Earth and has Earth rules, but Panthea does not fundamentally uh, function only on Earth rules, because then it wouldn't be a prison planet. It is fundamentally something that is incompatible with most trespassers and most like uh, trespasser like enemies of the worlds. Hey, Demon Overlord RNBD is now following. I sorry. It's good to see you. But yeah, so the world of Seventh Kiss is essentially a prison planet. That is why Corsair is there. He is imprisoned, and Marion is actually a outsider because he is not a prisoner. And so the world actually functions against Marion, and so that's why it's a pseudo terror. Because if it weren't, if it were a regular terror, I would just leave Marion alone, and Corsair could come and go as he pleased. So, aggressive trespasser factions. There are 4 aggressive trespasser factions. These are the people that are um, always moving. They're on the move. They're always doing something, and you do not want to get on their bad side. They break up into the rule followers and the rule breakers. Of the rule followers, you have the gentlemen and the pirates. The gentlemen quietly keep the rules and enforce the rules to maintain order when needed. I actually have a gentleman character. His name is Aloysius Davenport, and he is the reason why I, Nathaniel Wilhelm, am stuck here. He's kind of on my case. Pirates are keepers of the rules, but they exploit loopholes for personal gains. These loopholes include things like Gentleman Elias from the experimental log of the Crazy Lich. I will have to look into that. Think about the demon swords of Muramasa. The famed blacksmith Muramasa created a bunch of swords. They were some people call them demon swords, other people just know them as swords. And then in a time, certain point, Japan decided to just destroy a bunch of their swords as a way to disarm samurai and exploit peace and do that. Well, a lot of Muramasa's blades, famous blades, would have been destroyed in this movement. And since they would have just been regularly destroyed, most trespassers will be like, okay, well, if I would have taken it before this, it would have impacted this royal family who used it for ceremonies and da 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 da. What if it's just going to be destroyed and I take it? It doesn't affect the time space continuum and causality and things like that, which are usually what the rules center around. They center around kind of keeping the peace and leaving things as they are so that it just can act like regular. Can, everything will follow their natural path. Um, But because of these exploitations, they're not always clean and they're not always safe, and sometimes they get super special, powerful weapons like Excalibur and hidden items that probably destroyed the space continuum. But because they like spit in the face of the rules by exploiting loopholes, there is a lot of friction between the goody goody gentlemen and the debonair and sexy pirates. Of the aggressive factions of the Trespassers, there are the Crusaders, who are executioners sent after the most disruptive rule breakers. So these would be the most criminal of the pirates or beasts, which I'll talk about in a second. Um, they function as a last line of defense and as their own segment of like order keeping. They're like SWAT on steroids with swords and magical powers, given like full reign to decide who's a sinner and who's not. And they're really, if you come across an executioner, usually it's not to be on friendly terms. So they're usually to watch out for, because if they want to kill you, they will risk their own immortality to do so, and they are prepared for the life and death fight. Some of them even thrive in it. And then lastly, of the aggressive factions, there are the beasts. I see. I think of it as like an inquisition or tribunal of a church. Yes, exactly. They're very they follow the rules, and because there's no like arbiter, there's no pope who set the rules down, or no prophet, or no Jesus. There's just arbitrary rules that people have to follow. There's uh, a lot of arbitrary assumptions about why they're even in place and why they need to be followed and why they should be enforced and stuff like that. The beasts are the last faction of aggressive trespassers, and they are exactly what they sound like. They are aggressively or ignorantly disregarding of the rules and live a life of debauchery. These are people that will go plane to plane, planet to planet, whoring and murdering and breaking and shitting and just all out, just destroying whatever they come across or spiraling things out of order. And they'll actively be like king killers of like King Arthur killers before he pulls Excalibur and things like that. Like they are not fun or good people to be around. And sometimes they're just ignorant of the rules and just on a power trip, and sometimes they know the rules and just want to give a thumbs or not thumbs up, uh, give the bird to the Crusaders and the gentlemen. All right. And then the passive trespasser factions. Passive meaning they're not usually ones to go world to world to world to world. They usually go maybe once or twice. Um, This is an image also from Sheeta of Foxtails and Fairy Tales. From left to right, there is Julie, Naranin, Flint, and Minerva. And we worked really hard on the character designs, and I think it turned out super amazing. Actually, I love this picture. I wish I could show it around more, and I do when I can. Um, Anyways, actors. Actors would be like Cal and Sebas, where they usually transmigrate once and are largely ignorant of the greater story. The whole thing about order and chaos, they really don't give a dang. Um, Recasted, you'll see this in some literature, but I haven't done as much with, except for with Flint. Hearts. They're reincarnated into a loop of some kind, likely ignorant of the greater story. Or if they are, they do have knowledge of the greater story. That doesn't matter because they can't get out of the loop. You'll see these in people that um, keep dying and coming back to life and aren't able to figure out like what their purpose is in like a Groundhog Day sort of way. And they're the recasted. They're probably the most unfortunate of all the trespasser factions. Once again, another image provided by Sheeta as a great moment. This is the statues in the garden in front of the castle in Pearly Tales about Cal's proposal to Shaylee. There's a lot of lead up and build up to this event, and I just really like this picture too. Anyways, back to the lore dump. The passive trespasser factions include extras, who usually are retired trespassers, likely familiar with the greatest story and choose to be free of it, like Calamity Cal. And then there are celebrities, who are trespassers who act as gods in their respective stories, keeping the rules and defending their territory. This would be someone like Corsair. Corsair would be a celebrity because he portrays himself as a god. He acts like one. He has followers, but he's not as much a participant in the ongoing greater story as someone else. Sip some water. Watch my avatar freak out. Academy Isle terminology. Like I said, this is a lore dump. I had a lot to talk about. I came up with a lot and wrote a lot of this down, and then I made it all neat and in the presentation. The Academy Isle terminology. The first one are the wild cards, or the wilds. They're just trespassers who don't really know what they're doing and haven't stumbled on the Academy Isle yet, or any other trespassers to guide their way. There's actually quite a few of these, but there's not really a way to quantify them because they don't know about the factions, so they're just wild cards. We don't know what to do with them. We just kind of introduce them, try to introduce them to Academy Isle, and make them either on our side or run away, depending on who you are. There are students of Academy Isle, obviously, just people that are on Academy Isle and haven't graduated yet, and graduates, obviously, people who are on Academy Isle and haven't or have graduated. And usually they come back and usually do more traveling. A large percentage of trespassers fall in these categories. Some students will go and just be part of factions and dip early, and other people will do the whole term and graduate and fulfill their revenge or whatever they decide to do. There is one more that I didn't put down here, but those would be the natives. Native is a term for people that are just of a world, of a storyscape. They're just there, living their best life, or their worst life, but it's their life. But they're essentially just not trespassers. That's it. So, I know there's like a rule about having so many words per slide, and I did the best I could about having slides that are just not chock full of text and then not just reading straight from the text. Because I know that's bad presentation etiquette, is just to read everything that's on the slide and then move on. Although I'm sure I've done some of that already. All right, the dean. The most ambiguous existence who runs the school on Academy Isle. That's heavily tied to the being chaos. I've already kind of spilled some of this on the Discord. I'm not going to talk about so much of it, except for like kind of the theory, because there is no outer order goddess over Academy Isle. Sully fulfills her role in her own way. And it's kind of a weird, unique self prophecy of if chaos can be anything, at a certain point, chaos will form order. Like if you, that's saying that if you have a room full of monkeys, eventually they will write Shakespeare. This is the dean is kind of the fruition of essentially eventually chaos will become order. And so the dean is the embodiment of that order made through chaos. That's why it's kind of like a weird sketchy subject, because there's a lot of lore just inside the dean himself that's really hard to like explain without going over everything else. Do we know any students or grads? So I think the most notable one would be Corsair from Seventh Kiss. He is a graduate, and he actually graduated like essentially valedictorian um, as the outer god level. That's basically their master's program. There's like demigod, god, native god, stuff like that. Um, and he got outer god, like Bloodborne lore then. A little bit. It's just kind of like one more step into like it gets way high conceptual based when you get to be that high ranked in the program kind of thing. At a certain point, I don't know how to show Corsair's powers because he is so high up there. how about me? Am I a grad or a student? I am a graduate. I am also an outer god, but not the way Corsair is, where he's a celebrity. I just kind of do my own thing. Um, of the pirate faction, there are four notorious like top members who are all the north wind, the south wind, the south. Let's see, the cardinal directions. So northwest, northeast, southwest, and southeast. And I claim northwest. So I am one of those four, the most powerful of all the pirates, which is why Aloysius is after my tail, because he is just kind of a dick, to be honest. But outer gods are so weird and cool. Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into it, and a lot of it, there's just a lot. You'd be surprised how much baggage goes into it, because once you know a certain amount of stuff, there's a lot of things that you just can't do with that, and you know you can't do with that. So, um, you kind of know where your limits are, and luckily, my true form is this handsome, sexy facade, and not some like tentacle monster. Yeah, the North Wind. It's very anytime you see an NW or SW or NE or SE in some kind of context like that, there's it's usually one of us, one of our pseudonyms. So right now I'm going by Nathaniel Wilhelm because that's NW. But I've also gone by North Wind. I've also gone by other things like that. But there's other characters of the pirates who we have to speak in code when we talk to each other, usually because one of the passing gentlemen is after us for one reason or another. Yes, yeah. Theoretically, chaos opens up the whole nature of chaos opens up that there are just non-humanoids. That's why theoretically Cthulhu exists. We just don't like to talk about it because he's an asshole. Um, he he is what we would call a beast if he was more of a trespasser. Arctic wolf ones. No, some of them are just coincidence. A lot of it's mostly just leaving your mark as kind of an ego thing, but that wasn't me. Other terms. All right. I think we did go over this, but we'll just cover it real quick. Storyscapes is just a catch-all term for the realms universes watched over by order and chaos, and chronicled sometimes by yours truly. A greater story, essentially general or extensive knowledge about Order, Chaos, Academy, Isle, Storyscapes, and the Trespassers. If you know about the greater story, you usually are in the know about a lot more things. There are some rules about what we can and can't tell you. And about those guys, it all depends. There's a lot of fiction that's just fiction, and a lot of things you're just better off not knowing. So I will neither confirm nor deny most of the Cthulhu Outer God stuff. Just know that if there is a beast, they're not good people to be around. And if I had to put them under anything, usually those beings of ultimate chaos and outer godliness that want to just destroy and enslave all of humanity and make tentacles pop out of things, usually they fall in the beast category. Some trespassers used to be human and just aren't because they don't want to be humanoid anymore. Trespasser, anyone who willingly or unwillingly crosses between storyscapes and the rules, the arbitrary governing laws binding all trespassers, superseding their own powers gained over their travels. There I go, reading these things again. But I wrote them. I wrote them damn good. Yeah. So there is a place for a lot of this stuff, and most people in the isekai community have never addressed like people that go to, excuse me, multiple worlds. So I've just kind of taken that on myself, and still like, oh, excuse me, over the years, I've really kind of uh, polished this, and nobody's ever really kind of come close to. They just to expanding on what happens if you go to another world and you get to go to more worlds after that. And that's kind of where Trespassers inherently came from, is this idea of, oh, so I can gain cheat powers if I go to one world. Can I get more cheat powers if I go to a second world and a third and a fourth and a fifth? And that's when Trespassers were born. All right. Now we have our question and answer section. I know we've all kind of asked our questions throughout it, but now it's kind of we have free reign on anything. Do we have any questions? Have you ever heard of Mecha Shoken Sereta Ken or something like that? You know, most Japanese things that are like that, I don't know based on on that. Sorry, I turned my stream on and I heard myself and it threw me off. I'm looking up Mecha Shoken Sereta Ken. Okay, yes. No, I have read this one. Yeah. Um, the only problem with this one is that he's still, I don't know, he's still like rehearsing things with God. He's almost a recasted more than more than anything else, because he gets transported again and again and again, but he like kind of dies again and again and again, which feels more like a recasted event than anything else. Because being a recasted doesn't mean that you're just like the one world. You could be multiple worlds. That's why Flint counts as a recasted. So there are the trespassers and stuff. Will any of our main characters learn of this and maybe do more trespassing? I think the ones that we're gonna see the most of is Flint, as a recurring character and things, because that's kind of his recasted role. I did have a story idea for uh an extra, so a retired trespasser who just wants to live her life normally and then falls in love. And then when she falls in love, a crusader comes along, and then one of the taboos of trespassers is not to create other trespassers. And so she falls in this loop where because she wants to save the man that she loves, uh, who essentially stands up for her against the crusader, she takes him to Academy Isle and through the course of required reading, which would be a story I could only really write now after I have some novels in place. Because some of the required reading would be like, oh, let's drop by Foxtails and visit some of these characters' locations while we get in magic and learn magic. And let's drop by Pearly City and get inventory and a level up system and stuff like that. So another character that we're gonna see become a trespasser is actually Achilles from the Pearly City saga, but I'm not sure how to tell her story yet. What do Flint's does? All right. So one at a time. Marion properly. Oh, interesting. What do Flint's swords do? Did Cal give them to him? So Flint's swords are, I forget the name, but they're one of the cards. It's based off of Freyr's sword that fights for itself, but it's a curse blade. And part of the curse is that he will forever fall into adventure, which is part of how he became a trespasser. It increases encounter rates is the game term for it, but encounter rates usually just means that he gets sent to more worlds. He can create, I believe, 777 duplicates of it, and they will fight on their own based on the amount of weapons that he's mastered, and they can actually transform into weapons. So he can summon them all as swords and kind of use them in a general sense. Or if he's learned a certain fighting style, like with a spear or a long sword, they will take on that shape and do the sword form of that particular style and fight on their own. So the more things that he masters, the more powerful he gets. Cal did give them to him. Thus, story Barry. This sounds very interesting. Well, thank you. It's one that I only kind of came up with recently while making this presentation, because I was like, I don't have any extras. How could I place this? And then there's this new anime about fairies and a fairy guy who's a fairy warrior, and I was like, I didn't realize how much about this story I was stealing until I looked into this anime. But it was essentially about a warrior fairy who becomes a slave, and I was like, oh no! So I rehashed it, and the working idea is that he is a warrior fairy for the fairy kingdom, and because of a betrayal, he gets captured, and the fairy kingdom falls. And then after the kingdom falls, he becomes a slave and sent to becomes a gladiator slave essentially. Fights for his life. Because he's a fairy, he lives a long time, so it's a pretty hellish existence, but he's a warrior fairy, so he actually is very strong and gets through it. And then a war starts, and then all the gladiators essentially are caught up in the war. And then at a certain point, he either escapes or earns his freedom, and then kind of finally settles down, and then meets this girl that he likes, and this girl is super awesome. And then this girl turns out to be a extra who is in who when he's like declaring his undying love or through some other like super happy moment, the pin drops and the crusader shows up, and they have to essentially fight for their life. And the backstory of this girl is she's actually a beast who joined the pirate faction and then became an extra. But this guy's been chasing her since she became a beast and treats her like she never changed factions. So she trains her lover as a pirate, and they try to solidify themselves in the pirate faction to kind of get this crusader off their back. And so they would be the ones that would explore some of the behind the scenes trespasser things. And it's actually a story that I'd like to tell here in a story mode setting. So like I don't know if I could write the whole thing and get away with it on Wattpad or anything like that. I don't have enough material or whatever. But I'd like to have like a storytelling session where I can. One of my things that I do on streams is that I get to be a storyteller and tell these stories, and so I get to build up the trespasser world. Maybe instead of being on Wattpad, doing like tales of the trespassers on stream. and get to advertise in my books. Let's see. Forward level up system from Prayer World. So the power up would be UI, minimap, inventory, and no degrading of strength. Degrading of strength would be like not working out and losing your muscles for XP. Yeah, something like that. Definitely don't degrade in strength. It's definitely a perk of like video game logic. This inventory is like a go-to necessity for Trespassers, so they each have their own like niche video game world, like video game storyscape they go to or recommend for this reason or that reason. Yes, Cal bless them, I'm pretty sure. Makes sense, Sheeta. Achilles would be difficult to do as a trespasser. Achilles, the Mordred reincarnated sister? No. So Achilles is the daughter of Cal and Shaylee. But she's the daughter of Calamity Cal and Selene, who are from Calamity Timeline and Pearly Cities. And there's a lot to go into with them, but essentially, um, in the Calamity Timeline, Cal does not escape for his grand entrance, and the world succumbs to darkness. And Shaylee is pregnant, re- escapes with her people to the island of Dragonia, has her baby, and fights off the fiends until she fights like her last stand. She dies fighting just this huge invasion force. Meanwhile, she's raised Achilles, and they just have this bad end. No, yes, they have a bad end, and Kami uses Cal's wish or interferes somehow, and sends Shaylee and Selene. No, sends Shaylee and Achilles back in time, um, to essentially help fix the timeline. And then Selene reveals herself as Calamity Shaylee, and then Achilles, her greatest wish was to know her father in his heyday, and kind of gets to be in a spat-like relationship with Cal until she finds out that, oh my gosh, this was my dad that I always wanted to know. And some of the crossovers in her logic, kind of the plot holes in her logic come forward. Um, and essentially, Calamity Cal and Celine Shaylee, Calamity Cal and Shaylee, they return to regular Earth, and Achilles gets the power to cross realms back and forth thanks to Cal's wish. So Achilles is the daughter of Cal and Shaylee, the grown-up daughter, biological daughter. Um, she's just kind of a resource. I haven't figured out how to use her yet. There was one story where she was a love interest, and another story where I was going to have um, a different Achilles meet tragedy Achilles and in on Earth, and there was going to be a whole storyline there. Um, I just haven't nailed down how to use her as a resource yet. But she's going to be a trespasser. She just has the powers and hasn't come to it yet. Rising Chaos is following. Yay! Thank you, Rising Chaos, for following. I love you, and I love the rest of you. You're all great. You know the samurai girl in the Pearly series that's a part of the Kaus family? Wow, that was so much shorter and easier than I said. Yes, yeah, she's the samurai girl. She is Celine's daughter. Illustrious career. Thank you. Is the Prison Sage a recasted? Ooh, good question. I would say yes, because eventually he did reincarnate and then reincarnate again and then kind of retired. He just kind of did it. Like very traditional of the passive faction. Usually people in the passive faction, they transmigrate the minimum number of times to get their happy ending, and then they just happy ending. And they live there. Most of the aggressive faction do not settle down with happy endings. Oh, I remember now. Oh, good. Glad. I hope that was during my explanation. Oh yeah, you didn't list the Calamity Pearl world. Does that mean the world was destroyed or not available to be trespassed into? So Calamity Pearl world is just the future of Calamity um of Terra Paralis. So it's just the same world, just the future. But now it's changed. So it never will happen, I guess. It's not significant enough to warrant its own world in my intro space at the very least. I think that it can still be trespassed into. There's still like a tear in the fabric of we know it exists, but I haven't figured out if I'm going to use it yet. Good questions. Um, did I miss anyone? Marion probably. Marion might be a trespasser. I haven't decided yet, but if he learns enough from Corsair, Corsair's kind of the underlying bad guy of the series as well as the protagonist. He's kind of got an interesting role where Marion's almost the, even though Marion's the main character, he's kind of a reactionary character to Corsair's agenda. But if he learns enough from Corsair, he definitely can become a trespasser, or at least enough so that he definitely has an avenue to learn of the greater story and of Academy Isle and all that stuff. In fact, he already knows about Academy Isle. Or wait, no, Corsair hasn't taught about Academy Isle. It's just Corsair's backstory is explained in that world. But there's definitely an avenue. Corsair definitely has no like qualms about being like, if you want to know, he'll tell him. But at a certain point, he doesn't give him enough information to allow him to ask the question. All right, an hour and a half. We've almost done it. I feel like we've had a successful stream. We did it. We got here. We've spent time together. I have a little avatar guy who winks and opens his mouth when I talk. Are there any other questions? Anything about the Trespasser worlds? Anything about future stories? Anything about um, books that I've written? I know there's some like egotism about to be like, hey, you can ask all the questions about my stuff that you want to now. But I also don't talk to you guys in this kind of setting ever. So, when do you think Foxtails will come back? That is a good question. I am pretty burnt out on Foxtails. I'm finally coming back around. Um, but it's like one of those things where like I needed a break and I got a break. But now I'm invested in all these other things. Like I really want to write Seventh Kiss, and I sent a manuscript to Sheeta a little while ago about like I ran away from the Imperial family, and I kind of want to go back into that and like polish it up and at least publish like a short novelette like I've done with Seventh Kiss. So that might actually be one of my streams is me like going through and editing it and getting it to at least a stopping point where it could be a full story. So I would say earliest I don't think I would get to it before May. I think if I did it, I would like post like a chapter about I would post a couple chapters just to kind of like be like a special event. But I've also been working on Pearly series again. I've been really getting into it. I've really liked the way the characters are going now. Um, I feel like the main character I have has a bit more motivation and is less like flat. Let's see here. A one shot. Yeah, well, like I have like hundreds of words. I have like an entire battle scene, an entire like setting build up, characters fleshed out. It's like 100 pages long, but it's also like not because some of that is trimmed fat, just all in the same document. So I'm going through and like polishing off the fat and figuring out where I'm can like cut it and what I need to do so I can like write up an epilogue for it to make it a story I can publish. And thank you. I'm glad you were happy with the Pearly series epilogues. I wrote them in the day and then I was burnt out and then I finally got to come back to them and when I finally wrote them, I was really excited about them. So I'm really glad that people liked them. I know it was a long time coming. I know there are a lot of people probably missed it who don't even like have Wattpad accounts anymore. But I'm glad that I was able to finish it off. It really helped me and really helped me set like a a pace for writing Tales of the Pearly Empire, which will be number 3 in the series because uh, the Pearly City becomes an empire because Cal and Shayla get married. And I finally wrote a marriage scene. And like I even wrote like a marriage scene and then like went back and was like, this wasn't even a marriage scene. This was like they almost got married and then I cut away and didn't even write the marriage scene. And so like I actually went back and like wrote actual like, yeah, and like it was beautiful and Kami did this and they said that and this is what this means in the ring and da 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 da. Like a little bit of spoilers, but not like super harsh. For those of you that remember Shaylee's engagement ring, it was the ring of Gaia or the world or something like that, but it couldn't be taken off by anyone else but the person that put it on, which is how kind of Cal announced himself was back in the first couple chapters. He reforged that ring into 2 rings as wedding bands, and during their ring exchange ceremony, instead of like the circle being uh, a symbolism of eternity and how there's no end or no beginning. It's like, no, no, this is a mouth, and this is all about predators and prey. And it's all about when a predator catches their prey, they never let them go. And so they put these rings on each other that only they can take off as a symbol of I am the predator and you are my prey. And now that I have sunk my teeth in you, I will never let you go. Which I thought was super cute. And I thought was a nice touch and a good way to like use that ring and kind of make it a symbol for the better after it had kind of been a shackle for Shaylee. To be honest, I was kind of doubtful about the setting of book 3 of the Pearly series, but I'm excited about how it turned to be good. Yeah, I at a certain point I originally had it like starting with Cal and Shaylee getting into a big fight, and it's changed away from that. And part of me wants to go back, but part of me likes the direction it's going. But I definitely have been feeling it a lot more. Definitely liking the character development better. Um, the character Reg is now Reg and has motivation to be like not just a reactionary character, which is boring. But so now he's got like things that he wants to do and people that he wants to get back at. Um, I don't want to give away too much, but it ends up being more of Cal is doing Gaia a solid rather than Cal just kind of dinking around in his own world. So, so a little bit of character development there, a little bit more Cal and Shaylee having a more healthy side of the marriage rather than just like avoiding each other, but definitely setting up things for Cal and Christine's big showdown. And for those that don't know, Christine was the number one player, like PvP and everything. And Cal is just kind of enjoying the game and never really gotten in the competitive field about it. So she's actually a threat. Like I don't know if that really like shines through with the giant like kraken monster, but yeah, exactly. It would have been really weird. And so they don't have a fight as much as they like come together as a married couple and divide responsibilities. So it ended up being like a better turn. And I kind of like the idea of Cal and Shaylee using the whisper or chat function, wherever you want to call it, and sending like selfies of their like killing monsters and fiends to each other from separate sides of the world, just like it like a long distance relationship thing. I just I think that would be funny of just Shaylee being like, "Look at me killing all these monsters," and like throwing up a peace sign because Cal threw up a peace sign in his last tweet, or whatever. So, all right, just your life or your fictional life? Both. They're all my fictional life and real life. Lol, they can send videos and images in chat. Broken. Yeah, definitely. See, Cal is the god of adventures, and part of that, like, he gets access to like administrative privileges over the functions, and so I think he adds a few modern twists to it. Not only some quality of life improvements for the residents of the world who have never had it before, but also some advanced features for like him and his buddies who can now send videos and chat and streams and stuff like that. I haven't decided how far I'm gonna go into that way, but definitely I think they can send pictures and be like taking selfies while doing random shit and just keeping their marriage alive. So, all right, I am almost done. Do we have any last minute questions before I close the stream? And no, I want to thank everyone for coming out. I think you're all beautiful, handsome, wonderful people with lots to give and really nice booties for smacking and grabbing and other things. I think you guys need to realize that you're awesome and that I love you. I really appreciate that you've all been able to come. You've brought me this far just by being my fans and bringing me along, and I hope to return that favor by continuing to give you great stories. Will you be going back to any of your older stories on Wattpad? One of the ones I want to go back to is Wicked. Wicked I consider canon. Um, but I don't know if I'm going to just add to it and pick up where I left off or just completely rehash it. But Dexter and Death and Brother Nature and Mother Nature and all those characters and stuff like that, um, I may rework a little bit, but those characters are all canon. Calamity Cal is set up to meet Death from that universe when he gets introduced back to regular life. But at a certain point, I need to like rehash what I think I want to do with that story, and I think I might uh, include Cal as a character. Another story I want to like actually write down and get to is it's one that was only on my Instagram because I made it out of manga, like clipped and like reinstated, but it was about Valhalla, which was this floating island of heroes that the gods of this world created to kind of stop random other gods from stealing souls. So they created a hero training facility so that they could actually like divvy out and send people there. And then Dionysus, who became sober, ended up presiding over the anti-hero division. And the anti-heroes were specifically sent to magic fantasy worlds and stuff like that to essentially wreck shit and um, people who are abusing the summoning system. Will there be a sci-fi setting at some point? Um, actually, I have one I haven't talked about yet. It is called. I've been working. It's like Spiro was talking about this earlier, how he has this story set up and he doesn't know where to start. I have a sci-fi setting that I don't know where to start. I have 3,000 years of lore, and I don't know which character to follow when. Um, the entire basis of the story centers around this concept of human technology following a biomechanical set of technology and creating beings called dolls. But it's like DOL 1S for Designated Operational First Legion. Essentially, they're like closest thing I could think of is that they're like clone troopers from Star Wars, except that they're not uh, test tube babies based off of a clone, off of one person, genetic thing. They are fully designer test tube super soldiers to the point where they have three cores, one in like the head, one in the heart, one in the liver, as like black boxes, so they can still function if like someone shoots them in their head. You'd have to destroy the other cores. Um, they don't require food. They don't get sick. They don't age. They're not human. They're dolls. They're very much so like the most strict, like we bio engineered this idea of a super soldier that's a robot, but it's a robot made out of flesh. Um, essentially, I have an entire story about when they first were introduced, to the first batch of like soldiers, to when they were fought over, to when aliens invade, to when they are retired, to when there's legislation about them, to when they're brought out of retirement again, to when they're retired for the final time to live on Earth, where Earth is this like almost destroyed and only really dolls can live there, but they spend all of their time like replanting the Earth, but they do it in like weird fun ways. Like they play airsoft, but the BBs are like nutrients and seeds because as dolls they don't know how to like do regular things, so they just go on patrols like normal, and then they just go on patrols and they just have fun shooting each other with airsoft, and then the next day they like have like a water gun fight where they fight each other with water guns and water the lawn and stuff. So like I have like thousands of years of like where they come from to where they go to where they could go. um I started one. I know I said I was about done. Have a start. I have a start called the First Right Protocol, and it is essentially humans are divided and at war. And the people they're at war with are constantly pushing the edge of their territory, and only the dolls are really keeping them at bay because of the way their alien technology is. So the firstborn right is about a program where essentially there was they decided there was a lot of people that just they wanted to have babies but couldn't because of political ideologies and tensions. And so they said, "Hey, if you sign up for our program, we will give you a designer wife. And your job will to be a happy family, to have children, to live where we tell you to live, and like you can have like this happy white picket fence life. And we'll even give you a stipend and we'll provide you with jobs and all the stuff. You just got to move to where we tell you to move. And your firstborn child is ours. You have to dedicate your firstborn child to the military until they're at least some age." And so it's just this highly controversial military strategy to bolster human population, and more importantly to bolster a human slash doll hybrid army, because we're running out of soldiers. Because we have plenty of dolls to fight, we won't have any commanders to lead them. So that was my sci-fi story. Was where I started. Was with the firstborn right, which was getting really political. But I don't know. I just got stuck on Pearly Empire. So so yes, I have a sci-fi in the work. I just haven't finished it. All right. Um, I think that is all the time we have. Once again, thank you all for coming. All I think there were 6 of us at one point, 6 viewers. There's 5 of us, or 5 viewers now. I don't know where our height was. I didn't pay attention. I was so busy just having fun and chatting. I think I'll do this again then. Um, Definitely gonna look into getting a capture card so I can stream Switch games and stuff like that. I think I'll do like a resource stream or something on Sunday. I haven't decided yet. So my plan is Sunday night, 2 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And I'll post more details when I uh, have when I get after I go to bed and get some sleep. It's my bedtime. So I'm thinking Sundays and Wednesdays going forward. Definitely Sunday nights and Wednesday mornings. If that works, that's awesome. If it doesn't, I'm going to be posting the VODs and keeping them up. Uh, until next time, may the winds of fortune ever fill your sails. Love you guys.